There are very few films out there that get the distinction of being called the worst ever made. Names could spring to your mind like maybe The Room or Battlefield Earth, Showgirls. But let me tell you that none of these films would have been made without the influence of one man. A man who is considered so impactful of a director that he is known throughout history as the worst director to ever have lived. That man is Edward D. Wood Jr. And this is his masterpiece.
Come on, Space Trucker!
Plan 9 from Outer Space depicts a group of aliens attempting to take over the Earth by reanimating the dead into their mindless zombie slaves. Among them are an old man and his wife, both of which are vampires for some reason, and a police chief who's played by the wrestler Tor Johnson. After several attempts to attack a small town, a group of people attempt to fight the aliens back, damaging their spaceship and sending it hurtling into the atmosphere where it bursts into flames. And yes, those are supposed to be spaceships. Ed Wood was one of the most interesting people to ever have lived. He was a transvestite with an alter ego named Shirley.
Confidentially, I even paratrooped wearing a brassiere and panties. I'll tell you, I wasn't scared of being killed, but I was terrified of getting wounded and having the medics discover my secret.
And he was the director, writer, and producer of several films that were sadly unappreciated during his own life. Because they were terrible.
Beware of the big green dragon that sits on your doorstep. He eats little boys.
From Glen or Glenda to Bride of the Monster to The Sinister Urge, Wood's method of directing was very similar to somebody who was staging a play, but didn't really know how to translate that to film. The actors didn't move much around the scenery, sets were reused and copied over and over again, and footage was looped in to fill the times between action beats. That's a big theme with Plan 9 from Outer Space. There's only maybe 45 minutes of filmed material in this, and the rest of it is just narration over stock footage. Wood was pretty reliant on stock footage and public domain clips because they were free. So that's why all the scenes of weapons attacking the spaceships and people traveling from location to location were made up of old news clips and scenes from World War II and military test sites. It's also really all he could afford, because the film was made for a total of $60,000. By comparison, we had two amazing Vincent Price vehicles out that same year, House on Haunted Hill and The Tingler, and they were both made for budgets of close to 4 times as much as that one. Wood actually got most of the money from a Southern Baptist convention, who he convinced that he would see such a return from this one film, they'd have enough money to fund another film about the 12 Apostles. They didn't, in case you were wondering.
Since they will not listen or respect our existence, they cannot help but believe our powers when they see their own dead walking round again, brought about by our advancement in such things.
I would say that in the hands of a better filmmaker, this could have been a cheesy B-movie classic. I really mean this. The idea alone of aliens bringing the dead back to life as an unstoppable army is a great idea on paper. Imagine like Night of the Living Dead mixed with The Day the Earth Stood Still. It could have been great, but instead, we got this. Now, a lot of what goes wrong on screen has to do with Ed Wood himself, but first, let's take a look at the actors. Most of the actors in this film were either friends of Wood from previous productions or D-level celebrities that he grabbed at the very last minute. We have Vampira, who was a host of the Midnight Movie TV show in the mid-50s. And if you're thinking Elvira, yeah, that's pretty much where she got the idea from. She hated all of the lines that Wood had written for her and only agreed to be in the film if her part was changed to be silent. So for the entire time, she just kind of wanders around looking confused. Then there's Tor Johnson, who had been in a couple of other Ed Wood films, but was only now given a real character-driven role, and it's kind of a shame because his grasp of the English language wasn't the best.
Have one of the boys take the guy and the girl back to town. You take charge.
Okay, Inspector. What are you going to do?
Look around a little.
The film was also narrated by TV psychic Criswell, who a lot of people insisted was a true, honest-to-God psychic. But his introductions in this are the stuff of legend. Some of the greatest cue card reading you will ever see in your life.
And remember, my friend, future events such as these will affect you in the future.
And then there's Bella.
Sundown of the day, yet also the sundown of the old man's heart.
First of all, if you don't know who Bela Lugosi is, I am amazed you made it this far into a video about a cheesy 50s sci-fi movie. But one thing that you'll need to know is by this point, Bela Lugosi had come a long way from the brilliant actor who gave pathos and dignity to characters in Dracula, The Black Cat, and countless others. A lot of people criticized Wood for taking advantage of a beaten-down, heroin-addicted old man and getting him to take part in his films. Films that allowed for moments like this. I have no words. Wood insisted that there was a true friendship between the two, so honestly, I don't know who to believe, but if Martin Landau and Johnny Depp were any indication of how they actually got along, it worked out fine.
Those teeth don't frighten me.
How about these?
Now, unfortunately, this is Bela Lugosi's last movie. The footage that was used in this film was actually intended to be a Wood-produced vampire film. It was either going to be called Tomb of the Vampire or The Ghoul Goes West, and I really hope it was the latter because it would have predated Near Dark by like 3 decades. Unfortunately, Lugosi died before they were able to complete the footage, so they only shot a few scenes of the film, all of which Wood insisted be used in Plan 9 from Outer Space. So they had to film some extra scenes with him inside a house or wandering around the graveyard. So Wood brought in a chiropractor to use the same costume and pretend to be Bela Lugosi. And this would have worked if it weren't for the fact that he was a good foot or so taller than Bela and looked nothing like him. But don't worry, you totally can't tell it's him because, see, he's covering his face with a cloak there. You see it? You see how he thought that the audience would never know the difference?
Nobody will ever notice that. Filmmaking is not about the tiny details, it's about the big picture.
So what exactly makes Plan 9 from Outer Space so bad? In a word, everything.
You see? Your stupid minds. Stupid!
The acting is horrendous. Nobody speaks like humans actually communicate with each other.
Then they attacked a town. A small town, I'll admit, but nevertheless a town of people. People who died.
The sets are either terribly cheap or are used over and over and over again. The effects are the cheapest they could possibly be. The makeup is basically non-existent, and the action scenes are entirely made up of stock footage and people standing in front of backdrops. And then when the alien ships are attacked, it's dinner plates with aluminum foil. You can actually see the strings when they travel.
This American Flight 812 request.
So you're probably asking something along the lines of, why did you want to talk about it? Why do people love watching Ed Wood's work even though it's clearly terrible? Well, there's 2 reasons. Number 1, the Mystery Science Theater effect.
Ed Wood! No! I have agoraphobia!
This is the perfect bad movie to watch and laugh at and joke about with friends. Mystery Science Theater actually considered this film for the show, but had to turn it down because they talked too much to sneak in all the jokes they wanted. There is a riff tracks for it, though, and it is well worth the money.
As long as there is an open buffet somewhere, you can't keep Tor Johnson in the grave.
Colonel Edwards gave the signal to fire.
And somewhere in Korea, they did fire.
Merry Christmas! Sorry, too close.
But from a film studies perspective, you have to respect the idea that it exists at all. Because Ed Wood was really passionate about everything he did to a psychotic degree. His films were never going to be considered masterpieces, but he was determined to get his vision of a movie made exactly how he wanted. In a weird, twisted sense, he's kind of like Stanley Kubrick, where what he sees in his mind is exactly how it has to be on film. The only real difference is that Kubrick was a genius and Wood...
Stop him, Turner. He's close enough. Turn off your electrode gun. No!
I don't want to say he was a hack, but he definitely wasn't good.
Do you still believe it impossible we exist? You didn't actually think you were the only inhabited planet in the universe. How can any race be so stupid?
You could argue that Wood is an inspiration for passion projects because no matter what, he just wanted his art out there. No matter who saw it, who liked it, he just wanted to make it. If you want more insight into how Plan 9 was made or Ed Wood's life in general, please check out the Tim Burton biopic. It's a fantastic, if not overly dramatized and positive look into the man and his methods.
Really? Worst film you ever saw? Well, my next one will be better. Hello?
I love Plan 9 from Outer Space. I love its camp, I love its terrible acting, and I love its awful effects. I love making fun of it. Who doesn't? Look at it, it's crap. But I like more than that the lesson that came from Ed Wood's films. Even if nobody likes what you put out, even if the critics hate it, and the audiences don't like it, it's yours. And if you have the means and the ability to make it happen, you should get your visions out there for the world to see. And I think that was really summed up much better by Tim Burton's film.
Visions are worth fighting for. Why spend your life making someone else's dreams?
I mean, Wood died an alcoholic and spent a lot of time working in the porn industry, but I don't think anybody needs to know that for right now. Thank you, Ed. Thank you for all the good times that I've had watching your awful, awful movies.
God help us in the future.
Tell you what, next time let's go to the complete other spectrum. Let's watch a movie that's actually won an award that wasn't a worst for anything. And it's probably the only time that an Oscar winner will show up on this show.
I'm your #1 fan.
Psycho, groupie, cocaine, crazy. Psycho, groupie, cocaine, crazy. Psycho.